welcome everyone to Unity Live. I'm Emily Ghosh.
Brooklin, Rayne.
And we have such a special episode today. Today we're joined by Becca Bee, and we are going to be exploring so much. I can already feel the energy of this transmission. Becca is an Ascension guide, an evolutionary galactic astrologer specializing in trauma release, blueprint repatterning, and self-empowerment. Through soul coaching, QHHT, human design, and quantum astrology, her joy is guiding through the owner's manual of our divine blueprint and bringing to light the knowledge that we once knew. And Becca is just a wealth of so much knowledge, so much of our galactic history. And I'm just so excited to explore and dive in. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here and joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so honored to be here. I know it's a wide range. It's a lot of a lot of information or different aspects of the topic that we could cover. So I'm happy to explore it in whatever way you feel most guided.
Yeah, well, we would love to introduce you to those who might be new to you and your work and your service and your grace. Could you share a little with us about your story and kind of how you ended up in this now moment as this wellspring of divine knowledge and?
Oh, absolutely. The funniest thing is the least thing I'm that familiar with is actually talking about myself, but I'm super happy to share a little bit of my journey. My journey, I feel, really started very much like many of our journeys. Things just fell off. I had questions. My life, I would say, is magic now, but it didn't start out that way. And I feel as though my soul and my oversoul had quite a kind of a path of learning that I needed to go through in this lifetime in order to challenge a lot of the systems that are in place currently that are running programs on our emotions, our mind, and primarily on our freedom to be who we know in our heart that we came here to be in this lifetime. And I think that's a lot of where the discord comes for so many of us is we know in our heart what we want to be. And even as innocent children, there's just this joy overwhelming within us in the pure potential of this lifetime. And it's as if a lot of times for many of us, that light starts to get dimmed as we deal with either family, with schooling, with be it religions, be it with any systems or programming or whatever patterns that we've gone through in this life. And so there are many incredible light workers on this planet right now that are fully and completely going through their entire life path of how do we be that brilliance, that joy, that light again that we knew we came in as a spark with, as that little fetus in the womb of our mother, to be that soul's purpose that we came here to be. And so within this, I will say that even when I was young, I used to love to question a lot of things about the body. One of the things I always felt as a child was, aren't these bodies supposed to be eternal? Aren't they supposed to last longer? Aren't they supposed to have better health and vitality to them? And so that was one of the primary questions that started getting me to question a lot of other things in life. And through that, it's just been a journey. For about 25 years, this has just been something that I've been led to do. And that each journey that I go into a little bit deeper, yes, there is a question within myself for it, but I know without a doubt, all of these questions that I seek answers for are not for me. They're to share for us as a collective. And I think that's what's amazing that's happening right now is as a collective, we're coming together and we're bringing all of our memories back together. And I feel within this process, there is a great resurgence of our true galactic history coming back alive, coming back online for us here on the planet, right? You know, it's like all of these incredible things that we felt deep, deep, deep down inside, going like, man, this fear, this phobia, or this, you know, apprehension or anxiety I have doesn't feel right. You know, it doesn't even feel like it makes sense for me in this lifetime. And so part of this journey is that it's just my joy to start to share, how do we listen to our body? How do we let our body start to talk to us? That it truly is our access to the Akashic records in this lifetime. And as I've come to just kind of playfully say, it's our starship, it's our vehicle for travel. And especially as we start to explore more again about our ancient practices that I feel are coming back again. These are the practices that we think of as ancient, but really they are the practices of our advanced consciousness, of advanced civilization, and how Earth used to be before we really started falling through a lot of the programs that are on the planet over the last thousands of years. And so as we're reinstating ourselves back into our true inheritance, that these initiations coming back to us are really teaching us how to travel in our consciousness, to be back with our soul families, our star families, and to again, just bring our records back to Earth. So that's a little bit about
That's a little bit of a lot of bit of awesome is what that is. Oh my gosh, I'm like so excited. If I were a dog, my tail would be wagging. Maybe I am a dog. Yeah, I am so excited. I love how you brought it through, and the level of clarity that resonates through you, and the wisdom that comes through is just such. It's like literally, I felt like it was like the fresh breath of air and wind just kind of blowing through the transmission that you just brought through. So thank you for being here, being you. And yeah, I'm so excited to dive in. I won't hog all the questions.
Okay, well, I have a million questions, and I feel like one place to start is because you have, you know, this wealth of knowledge when it comes to our galactic history. I feel like in sharing some of that, it can be helpful really in understanding, you know, this journey of being a starseed and why, you know, many may feel out of place here on Earth, maybe looking for, you know, higher dimensions or, you know, just a feeling of wanting that transparency and love. And, you know, just if you can explain a little bit from your perspective of this journey.
Oh, I would love to. My all of the information coming through is just sparking through, because this is such a unique place that I think we're really getting our memories back. Because when I really tap in energetically, when we really start to look at how our energy of our body is, understanding the micro and the macro, that we have an awareness, those of us that are sensitive to energy, and this is like something we can study through all sorts of modalities, that there's more to us than just our physical body. We could think of our different aura layers, we could think of our chakras, we could think of our light body layers, and so on and so forth. But part of our evolution through our consciousness with remembering this wisdom is starting to get to see the mechanics through the spiritual lens, if you will, and understanding our morphogenetic patterns, our morphogenetic layers to us. Why do we play out these blueprints that we are playing? And it's not by accident. These morphogenetic patterns of which we're a part of are truly stemming soul, our soul family, our oversoul family, and the collective memories, not only of humanity, but the different star races that we are most closely tied to. So these are influences upon our sacred geometry. You could think of it like that, and that our sacred geometry is like the luminescent light. Our light language that moves through our DNA, it sequences through every single molecule of our body. So this is partially how we are the living library. And so as a lot of this energy is coursing through us, that we actually, there's a hole in many of us. I had this as a child. I would look to the stars. I would, connect to guides or to, the fairy realm even, and different environments and dimensions, and many times kind of wish to go home, wish to not be here anymore. And this is coming from our lack of being in a supportive environment that teaches us what we're feeling. Because in truth, as we've really started to gather the wisdom, it's not about going anywhere. It's actually about dropping back in and going through our internal stargates back to the wisdom of these records that really hold our family lineage. And so I'm going to tie this into something that I think is a really profound way for us to even explore this. And this is even from the concept, if any of you are familiar with family constellations. Family constellations gives us an opportunity to see that we hold the story of our ancestors right within us. Whether or not we knew the story, whether or not these beings are still in living physical form anymore, it doesn't matter. That the story lives inside of us. And most times when the story is resonating or speaking out in our life, it's usually speaking out in our life through some sort of discord, such as anxiety, fears, depressions, lower vibrations. And the reason why for this is because any place that the story doesn't have a clean flow of energy back to God's source light, that any place that energy has been stuck or bound or trapped through lower dimensions of lower frequencies of, say, emotions here within the emotions of the body. And again, most of the time this happens through trauma signatures, traumas that we go through where it is so traumatic that our consciousness doesn't have a way to conceptualize it, understand it, or process it. So therefore, it has no way to continue moving it through our energy systems or our body, and primarily out into our light body. So it becomes trapped. And to give an example of this, kind of how we see it here in our physical reality, something incredibly traumatic may happen to us. And if we don't have a way to process it because it happens too quickly, too suddenly, or our consciousness just isn't at a level to process or understand it, it'll get trapped in the body. And these overly trapped emotions become things that we think of as even things like PTSD. They're trapped memories that are just recycling within us. So now, as we can understand this, even from an ancestral DNA perspective, as being a human here on Earth through this human vehicle that we're in, we also know that our light language and our morphogenetic light that is moving through us, through our DNA, telling our galactic story, is also telling these very same stories. And primarily the way that we start to find those memories are through the things that don't feel correct. They don't feel as though they make sense. They feel almost as though it's like an itch, or it's like a curiosity, or like a question that we can't stop seeking the answer for. And as we get to understand this, now it's starting to realize just as much as that concept of family constellations, that we hold all of the places within us where the family tree, so to speak, may have been out of place. That within family constellations, what I love is there's a phrase within there that says that we are restoring everything back to love. That everything that we witness, the witnessing is for the primary place of going through some processes in order to be able to put it back in its correct place and to restore it back to love. That love is what flows. And so within this is one of the beautiful ways where our galactic history starts to play out within us. So for myself personally, how this really started to come through is through dreams, through meditations. But for me, a lot of kind of my triggers and my curiosity did come through dreams. I used to have dreams as a child of off-planetary things. I had dreams all the way where they started getting quite expansive specifically later teens and into my early 20s, where I was having full-on dreams of galactic wars, spaceships and battles and space and planets, and feeling all of these battles happening in space. And it did not make sense to me because it wasn't something that was part of my learning or part of my upbringing to think of anything outside of there. I was raised in a very strict Christian environment where it's either a demon or an angel. Those were the two lines of everything, right? And so within this, as I started to seek how to begin to sit with many times the emotions or the feelings inside that we want to run away from, we want to bury, we want to hide because they hurt so bad or they might be so uncomfortable. I started really being gifted through my guidance that this was the doorways, these were the portals in order to jump through time, because time really only exists the way it does here on Earth. It's a dimensional frequency for us. So once we start to move through these portals through our consciousness, we step out of time, where we can instantaneously be within the origin points of where these emotions came from. And so within this, my guides started really working with me very gently at first. They didn't present the most interesting forms to me right away. A lot of the first forms that even started to come to me had more humanoid form in order for me to be able to relate to them. They didn't start right off with the mantis beings, because I remember my first introduction to this incredible race line of Christed beings. I had to pause back a little bit and be like, oh, who are you? Who are you? What are your intentions? So there's so much programming that we have on this earth that a lot of times, even getting our galactic history, we have to be gentle with ourselves to where are we ready to actually see what's out in the cosmos, because it all does not represent what we know here on Earth. And so as that journey continued, my most predominant memories that were coming through were those of feeling responsible, blaming myself, feeling as though I was the one responsible for everything that's gone wrong on this planet. You know, and it's like you could sit and go like, well, that makes no sense. Of course, like, how is one person responsible for this? And as I started to allow myself to go into this, this is where I really started to step into the Lyran wars, the Lyran galactic history, finding myself within those times, becoming immersed within it, starting to feel the memories, feel the experiences, beginning to journal exactly what I remembered from those lifetimes. And the more and more that I was able to bring this energy back, it purged through me, through just torrents of tears of feeling planets completely being destroyed, civilizations being annihilated, people being harmed, people losing their homes. Just this wealth of like emotion just started to pour through. And as that happened, not only did it begin to start relieving a lot of the places where just that angst and that self almost blame and destruction was coming in my own life, to like punish myself for something I didn't even understand. It began to alleviate that, but now open the doors. And through these doorways, beginning to share this, connect with others. Let us all start to share these memories together so we can start as a collective, releasing this pain that we have now the opportunity to restore back to love. Because it's time for us to rewrite the story. It's time for us to step back into our divinity, and it's time for us to set ourselves free from being the victims and blaming ourselves so that we can go forward into being the creators that we were truly birthed to be within this lifetime. So if you have more specific questions about galactic races, but that's kind of how I started bringing forth galactic history and beginning to even explore that information.
That is an amazing overview. Just so much wisdom coming through. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, like a journey, following you on the journey, and what a beautiful blueprint that you've come in with, and and how omnipotent it is in this now time, as people are really waking up in big waves, right, and really trying to find their footing and their grounding, and come to a place of greater acceptance and awareness and surrender, and sort of malleability around things that, as we know, have been really kept beyond the veils of illusion, and can create a lot of surprise, we'll just say, and or fear and trauma, and all of a sudden now having these awarenesses rise within and come in big ways. So to be able to have someone such as yourself that has really kind of set the path and opened the doorways and created systems and ways in which to assist others in accessing this and integrating it into their physical, mental, emotional, and spirit bodies is just really profound. And then all the ways in which you brought it through are just really assist in painting the bigger picture, and the grander and the broader scope of the sort of the intricacies of all these different systems and how they're interwoven, and and how to there are all these different ways in which we can access it too, right? But one thing that I really love that you bring in, and I'm excited because you're speaking my language here, is that what's becoming more and more and more evident as the veils thin and the quantum fabric is greater revealed, is that that our DNA, our cells, are these massive divine technologies that hold the full scope, I feel like, of the everything. I mean, we know that the access to it and the specifics of it are unique to each person, but the fact that it holds all of our information that we're meant to experience and play out and receive and expand upon within our blueprint here. But what I feel like as well is that as we do that, and as we access that, and as we integrate and we come back into wholeness, what I'm being shown, and I'm curious if this is what your perspective is on this and how you receive it, is that there we can transcend our blueprint, and we can transcend the initial sort of access to what is programmed within that DNA based upon how we're participating in this now time, and and that seems to be opening up even beyond our universe into into greater and greater depths of the multiverse. And so I'm so curious what your experience has been with that, or what is most recently felt with that or revealed with that, and also to what degree of of what you've been diving into with galactic astrology and your and of this universal system, what you're seeing in terms of the beings that are coming in right now and activating that are here from far beyond our universal system too.
Oh, that is like that is so exciting to me. Even getting the opportunity to do chart readings for people and to help explore with others their own soul's journey, I am finding such an incredible joy in the diversity of souls that have answered the call of Gaia, who are participating in each individual's journey. And most predominantly, and I'm going to loop it back around, but I do want to say I am beyond excited, especially when we get to really look at the children that are coming through. Even the ones in their teens, but really the ones even 10 years old and younger right now, and even just feeling the vibration for the ones that are coming through right now, are a whole other species of humanity. We are honored to honestly be able to get to learn from them and to hold space for them and respect them. And thank you kind of for bringing this to lead this way, because this has honestly been a lot of my passion. Is for myself personally, I know what I went through growing up and the challenges I went through to be able to break free within myself, to be my own unique expression in this reality, but to have not had any support with that along the way, right? And so my passion really in this lifetime is how can I support others in how they get to now parent their children or their grandchildren? And how can we as a collective be a support for all of these incredible star seeds coming through that are not going to have to go through all of the years of questioning that we had to go through in order to get to this place? And then we can step back and just say, show me your magic. So within this, yes, I feel as I agree wholeheartedly with that. Yes, we can rewrite, transcend, or what I feel is realign our blueprint back to our divine blueprint. I feel as though our blueprints throughout soul incarnations pick up the storylines along the way of our soul's journey. Many souls here on this planet are holding records and memories from Lyran Wars, Sirius, from the Orion and all of the Orion Wars. There are many, many souls on this planet that have records within their DNA of living in planets that had nothing to do with what was going on in Orion, or the Orion Empire or the Draconian Empire, but their planets were raided. Their planets or their people were violated through these wars. And as we get to see this energy within there, it has played out all over again here on Earth. If you look back through history, just even like thinking about the time when the ships were starting to sail across, this is not correct history, but we're going to look at it from this perspective anyways. The times when, say, the ships were sailing across the ocean, supposedly discovering new land and new people, and they find a new place and they say, oh, well, if I discovered it, so I'm going to plant a flag and now it's mine and I'm going to take it over. And oh, too bad there's always already a species of beings that lives here. We're just going to take it over. And so this has happened throughout our galactic history. We get to understand this. But one of the main themes that I really feel a lot of indigos, crystallines, star seeds, light workers, however you feel yourself called to be resonant with, that the true passion really comes from breaking free from the programming. This is the mind programming, the mind hypnosis. So this would be everything from commercials to televisions to knowing you're getting programmed in churches or schools or through repetitive speech. There's going to be an understanding, and I'm just going to be straight out and say it. I invite you to really feel yourself. If you're scrolling through TikTok, if you're scrolling through Instagram, if you're scrolling through any of those, and you find yourself going into like a zone, or becoming anxious, or finding yourself starting to compare yourself. Am I doing as good as other people? That this is one of the primary ways in which society's consciousness is being programmed by Orion Empire technologies. These are the mind programming technologies. And it's amazing because once we stop to see it, we start to realize anything that's scrolling that fast through us, where our fingers just doing this, now our consciousness isn't really involved. It's just going straight into the subconscious. And you will then find yourself talking with someone who will argue animately about something that they don't even know why they believe what they believe, but they'll argue you to the end for it, right? Because it's coming through this energy. And what's happening for a lot of, especially even the younger generations, I'm watching them say no to the technology, no to wanting that influence in their energy, because we realize if we tap into our body, it doesn't feel good. Those of us that as you start to evolve through repatterning your DNA back into alignment, organic codes, the light language moving through your DNA can't handle it. You get too sensitive to that information, to that kind of technology moving through. So therefore, there almost becomes a level of starting to become aware, oh, isn't that interesting? I didn't realize I was starting to get anxious checking out everybody else's profile, checking out everybody else's information. And so now as we get to see this, we're realizing that the battle here in this reality is the battle for our consciousness. What is streaming through us? What is streaming through the way that we're thinking, the way that we're believing? And when we start to implement something that is not new at all, it's a very it's a very embedded practice, which is the practice of mindfulness. Start to be observant of every thought, feeling, and an emotion that we have pulsing through us. That we start to get to ask, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? I was just in that situation. And immediately I felt anxiety. Immediately I started to put myself down. Immediately I felt as though I wanted to run and hide. However, these things come up. And then once we start to catch it, we start to now get to do that thing of listening to our library within ourselves so that it can lead us to where it comes from, so that we can actually ask ourselves, is this even mine? Does this even belong to me? And if it doesn't, I'm a sovereign being. Do I choose to have this belief? And anything in the way of me stepping into my truth belief, my own higher resonance of light language belief, higher self, pull it from me now. So within this, that there's a lot of resonance that we're going to feel within us of having things that don't feel right in our life. And that the more we stop to ask ourselves, okay, well, if the 5G didn't feel comfortable for us and all these new towers, and oh my gosh, I walk into this building and it feels uncomfortable for my body because, you know, our bodies are designed more to harmonize with natural magnetics and currencies upon the planet, that most of us have not questioned it. But now as we start to question it, we're going to have an awareness of it for the children who are way more sensitive than we are. This is the thing that kind of blows me away, is that the more that we grab this, the more that we're going to realize we're going to be the true ambassadors and guardians for these star seeds, which are very advanced beings coming through to help protect their energy systems so that it doesn't get disconnected within their light language or their DNA. So their light body strands aren't disconnected from the material realm to their light body realm, or the physical to the light body. So they stay interconnected, so that feedback loop of their higher self wisdom and all the information they're coming to bring stays connected here. And so within this, part of this that a lot of us are feeling is the vibration within ourselves of breaking free from the hypnosis, the mind control, the technologies that were utilized and developed within the timelines of a lot of the Orion wars, a lot of those Orion overtaking of planetary systems, overtaking of races. And as we start to tap into those memories, we now get to go back. Remember where those feelings come from that don't feel correct. We get to free ourselves, so restore it back to love. And then we get to go like, oh, wait a minute, that feels awfully familiar with what's happening here on Earth, where we get to stand up and say, now, from this new level of understanding with our wisdom, we can, with our own records, stand up and say, we do not consent. What do we want to recreate? And this is how we recreate the dream here. So this is also how, as our blueprint morphs out of the old storylines, we also have the responsibility to live it. We can't just dream a new story. We got to actually live our new story here on Earth too. So within that, I feel as though one of the greatest gifts was the question that I kept having. I was all like, it seems incorrect that we would have been born here without any clues as to an owner's manual. I used to always joke about that. Wouldn't it be nice if we had an owner's manual? An owner's manual how to raise our children, an owner's manual how to live our life. And as I really started going through with this, I started to really have, and this was probably about 10 to 12 years ago or so, probably around the 2012, I started having meditations where they started shifting very incredibly. And I didn't realize who they were at first, but I did come to realize they were the Hathors. And as the Hathors began to sing tone through me, to open up new memories, what they really started to bring through is this major pulse into starting to look at astrology, astronomy, the fixed stars, the galactic energy in this level to begin to understand it. And they shared that this was the wisdom that we always had. That when a child would have been conceived, the stars would have already been looked at. You know, there's a whole process of being able to see one's soul's journey through our blueprint, through the stars. And that as we start to look at this, that we can understand that a lot of times the things that hold the greatest wisdom for us have been, I'll make sure I don't use any improper language because that's what wanted to come up, but has been deemed bad or wrong or dark or evil, right? And so now this is where we start to get into things like even astrology. For how long was seen as, oh, something that was whimsical, or that, you know, strange people did, or that had no validity to it. You know, it was deemed as something that didn't have any relevance to life. We can see this even through a lot of the earth-based practices, that many of our wisdom keepers, the divine feminine and the wisdom keepers of many temples, had to go into hiding because all of a sudden it started becoming witchcraft or dark arts or something bad, right? And so within this, as we start to reclaim our history, we're going to have to do a cleansing within ourselves of a lot of the programming that's been placed on us of, oh, does that really matter? Oh, is that really something that's important? And as these wisdom teachers, such as the Hathors, come through with this, what they really share is, when you know where you are from, then you know where you are going. Because the true journey of this lifetime, as they showed it to me, is that our lifetime is meant to be a preparation for our transition through consciousness. And that when we transition out of the body, what we might call the death process or going through the bardos, do you know where you're going? Do you know which stargates that you're going to travel through? Do you know where home is? And so as I really delved in through this, I have just been on this absolute journey of love and adoration for how much of our wisdom is held right within our planetary placements, right within, I love to really delve into not only the astrology, the evolutionary aspect of it, the gene keys, the human design aspect of it, the fixed stars and the galactic history of it from our star nations. And as all of these get interwoven together, now we start to see where we're being programmed, where we're starting to feel certain emotions that we're feeling, certain vibrations that we're feeling. And this is the true gift to the transcendence from the archetypes. That in essence, our first journey in a lot of ways starts with, many of us know what our sun sign is. But that in order to really embrace your sun sign, that you must also embrace the absolute polarity of it. So we're in the sign of Aquarius right now, which means all Aquarians also need to be just as much Leo. And that's just the start. But that as the start goes, we start to find the balance. We come into our own balance. That polarity is every place that we get to see, many places, the places that we are not being our truth, or what human design might say is the not self. But that it's all a gift to all the places that we might have fractured ourselves through trauma, in past incarnational experiences where we get to find the pieces of ourself that we forgot to be sovereign within ourselves, and we bring all of our responsibility back into ourselves. So all of our responsibility, in essence, as it goes more macro, means that we're going to take our responsibility back from all of the archetypes of the planets. So in essence, we do start to change our blueprint, because instead of allowing the planets to monitor us through the transits, through the lunar cycles, and through all of these, we can start to be the sovereign of our energy, and we truly become whole through all of the archetypes, all 12 pillars and beyond. Because there's many asteroids and trans-Neptunian planets that are really coming into influence, as well as the fixed stars. And that as we embrace this energy, we start to find all of our starseed records singing right within us. And we find our way to connect to all of the avatars that we are through the multiple dimensions. So we're not fractured anymore, but yet we can be a living resource in the now for the wisdom that might be held on many, many timelines. So in essence, in short, what that would be like is as though you connect to an aspect of yourself, say in the Sirius star system, and you find yourself maybe working through one of the wisdom temples. All of a sudden, as you reconnect to that avatar, not only do you merge yourself in your consciousness with that aspect of yourself, but now you share wisdom between two completely different dimensional spectrums that become fully active and present in the now for all avatars. Some of the that the share how intertwined we are through many, many incarnations. Did I glitch a little bit?
Yeah, just for a second there. You're back.
The internet's been quite a challenge for me lately. But that, in essence, as we start to take our sovereignty back, we start to now observe our DNA, and just for fun, as many of us may have been drawn to explore the energy of, say, the sacred serpent energy or the sacred dragon energy, that they have shown in a beautiful way as the DNA flows through us, as it's moving through us, that truly it's moving through every single cell and in the nucleus of all of our cells in our body. But that at this core, at the electron, the proton, the neutron, that light that is blinking on and off within us, that is our star spark. That is truly our starlight, our light language that's interacting with that DNA that's moving through. And that as it moves through, they show it as the DNA. If you ever see those videos where DNA is zipping and unzipping and rewriting itself continuously, they share that this is truly the sacred serpent, the living light that moves through all of us. So even when we think about activating our Kundalini energy, we are activating the light force energy to move through us with a greater veracity through us, so that it begins to activate the different chambers and the different centers within our star traveler, our Earth, our low body spaceship, right? I always joke that we don't even know how to use half the gadgets that the starship even has. But then as we come into wholeness again, that I feel in a lot of ways is how we completely rewrite the blueprint, rewrite our story, rewrite ourselves back. And that, as complicated as it might sound, in truth, it's quite as simple as just stepping into mindfulness, being willing to be on that path of fully and completely starting to challenge everything in your life that does not resonate with your heart, your soul. And then go on that path of being that courage that it takes to be your own starfire, of challenging anything that keeps you from being your luminosity. And that is how we rewrite the dream from right within this reality.
Yeah, so beautifully orchestrated, and thank you so much for sharing and taking us on that journey. One thing that I know is keeps sparking as a point of sharing is, would you say within your system of wisdom and knowing that you would equate that point of integration of participation with all the archetypes of the planetary, the planets of this particular universe, with simultaneously, embodying, if not in totality, greater depths of our oversoul or our monadic template? Is there a direct correlation within the astrological languaging and so forth that sort of shares that that union?
Oh, that's an amazing question. The whole concept of soul, oversoul, the Christ avatar, God self, is so expansive. And I truly, from the way that I've become a little more familiar with it, as the guides have showed me, my understanding is that the archetypes of the planetary systems are primarily playing upon our soul or our consciousness within this reality, and that's part of the frequency net that keeps us that feeling of being blocked, feeling as though we're disconnected from our guides, our higher selves. And a lot of what's happening currently as the solar energy is increasing is this frequency net is starting to dissipate. It is changing. And this is happening not only for those of us that are incarnated on Earth, because this is why we do what we do. It is very important for us to be here, because the more we activate our light within, the more we begin to create those nodes or the stability points to hold the new light codes on this planet. And we also have incredible, beautiful, benevolent, many different species, many different cosmic families that are holding space within our solar system and even out further, that are also helping to stabilize this. So I feel that our oversoul would actually be more within an alignment with our Christ avatar, God self, even going into the pre-polarity state of being, going back into, let me explain it this way, at least, because it's so kind of in depth, it's kind of hard to explain sometimes what they show. But they show a lot of times when people go through, say, a past life or a QHHT session, and they can go into the afterlife place, or a place where they begin to connect into many times a luminescent field. It feels like pure light. And it's this energy of sensing the presence of others, but yet there is a collective unity within this space. And many times it's from our human perspective that our forms, or who we be within the oversoul to the Christ avatar aspect of our body, would not be something that we would see as a form. And this is why when many times people connect to the Arcturians, many people connect to the Mantis or the Blue Ray lineage, or the etheric Syrians or Lyrans, they seem almost like orbs of light. And so when we begin to start to connect to this level of consciousness, and this is just my understanding from what the guides have shown, is that the archetypes do not play on that level of consciousness, but our challenge in this reality is to get our human consciousness, if you will, reconnected through our light codes, so that we can have access to that channels where we actually transcend the consciousness of the archetypes, if you will, in order to have that clean channel of information. And what happens many times when we experience this, at least this is my experience, is there's that sense of things feel like they make more sense here. The things that felt like super challenging or was overwhelming, now all of a sudden just has a sense that it's like, oh, okay, I get that perspective from a higher perspective, pulling out and seeing it maybe from these higher consciousness perspectives allows us to start to not take things so personally that are happening within this reality, even when it comes to thinking about the family that we grew up with, or challenging relationships that we've been in, or coworkers that we've had to work with. We can start to see, oh, Well, if they're operating off of those programs, our gift primarily is to start to change our blueprint within ourselves so that that doesn't need to play out within our reality anymore. And it maybe might not disappear. One of the things that guides have shown recently, which I thought was fascinating, is that from the perspective, there's this kind of idea of time travel. And the idea of time travel is like, oh, well, couldn't you just go back in time? And if you could go back in time, couldn't you just change something so that that wouldn't exist anymore? Right? And so it's kind of like a fantasy thought, right? And the guides have said, so and this is primarily from the Ontarians, they said specifically that within the infinite intelligence of the universe, that whatever has been imagined cannot be unimagined. So there's no way to like go back to say before the Lyran Wars and like, can we just make it like it never happened? What they show is that there is a lot of beings that do move through the time curvature, but what they are doing is they are influencing through consciousness, the current consciousness of that timeline, in order to begin to shift all the future potential timelines off of that moment. So in essence, when we heal our childhood wounds, what we're doing is we're changing time. We're changing our future, because when we hold trauma from our childhood, we are literally playing out something that maybe happened in 1970 or 1980, or depending on, you know, whatever timeline that trauma happened on. But that very timeline of, say, we'll just say 1982 might be living and breathing in 2023. So therefore, there is an absolute way in which 1980 is still influencing 2023. We go back, we don't change it. We don't maybe like make it like it never happened, but what we do change is our emotional charge and our perception to it. So it frees it. And they show that when we do this, and the Arcturians are masters at working with how to change this energy. They say when we can liberate that charge of energy, life force energy flows through, the living light flows through freely again and unbinds us so that we become more and more and more and more in the now. And that as we be in the now, then our consciousness begins to spiral through the living ladder within us. And as our consciousness expands, we transcend the limitations that we feel in this reality. And that there is a level within us that we have to honor, that not everybody may be at the place that they're choosing to transcend. So it's our job to hold our frequency and our energy and be it, but not to allow our imagination to continue to see what's wrong. This is a tricky part about Earth, but rather to create your dream and find others dreaming the same dream. And as we collaborate together, our dream orb grows stronger. And this is where these new children are asking to be born into, is into these new dream realms that hold high consciousness for them to now expand it in a whole new way. And that as we get to kind of hold that vibration of knowing we're never going to make things as though they didn't happen. What we are going to realize is that we take the wisdom from it, we get to see the pattern of it, and we get to transcend it. And this, in truth, they've shown, and I love this from, there's many star seeds on this planet right now that come from star nations, like beautiful light star nations, such as beings from the Canceri star nation, who are living examples of transcending suffering. So transcending the Orion Empire's influence upon them, And they didn't do it by fighting them. They didn't do it by getting weapons stronger than them and going after them or dealing with it on that level. They literally learned how to activate their light body and became fully a conscious species in a light spectrum of a being. They all consensusly raised their consciousness to a level where the influence of that Orion Empire didn't match, couldn't touch them, couldn't reach them. And there's a lot of star seeds currently that are coming in primarily to help us learn this very thing right now. How do we transcend? By going inwards, activating our own light, learning how to raise our consciousness so we know that where we are going. And as we be that pillar of light here on earth, as we be our own starfire, it's just going to catch what I think is like a wildfire for all of those that are having these very same questions.
Beautiful.
So inspiring. This is such an illuminating, such an activating conversation. I know that there are some questions that are coming through in the chat. If somebody has a question that's maybe further up, if you can leave it again.
There's only two that I can see right here. There's one that's saying, they're asking if I'm saying that traditional astrology is part of a net that holds us from our sovereignty and autonomy. What I'm referring to is that within the way that, again, that the guides have shown it, is that there's a base way in which consciousness is kind of held into a consensus dream within this reality. And that when we start to truly understand how the stars influence us, we can actually begin to utilize it as tools. So it's not influencing us, but rather we become at that level so where we can utilize it. So it is a very valuable tool for us to utilize, but that does become at a particular level where the mass gravitational fields of planetary bodies are not going to play on our physical body, but that wouldn't be until we really start to reach more levels of light body. But that within this reality, it very much is a part of it. Yes, it has been utilized by negative intended beings because most humanity is completely unaware of it. So therefore, they don't utilize it as a sense of like, oh, let me kind of give an example. They follow astrology. They follow the astronomy, the understanding of how the energy is. Therefore, they know that when mass consciousness is not aware of, say, what maybe Jupiter is doing or Mars is doing, and certain energies that might heighten energy or even anxiety upon the planet, they will plan things at particular times to mass put out through media at these particular times to heighten the discord upon the planet. So it's a dual thing. It's kind of like nature. It's kind of like fire. It has no intention to be good or bad. It's how it is used. So when we start to utilize it as an understanding within ourselves of how it influences us, what ours is mapped out like on our geometry, then we get to start to go like, oh, and I'll give you an example. There's moments in my life where there'll be a certain thought or an energy that'll come into my life. And in that moment, I'll be like, oh, I know exactly what that is. That's just my gate 48 flaring up right now, or oh, that's just this energy that I'm feeling pulsing me a little bit. And so now you get to take more of that sovereignty to break free. So I love that. That's actually, it's amazing. It's definitely something that's important for us, but to remember its power, because anything that has power has been used in many different ways, and we want to bring it back to integrity and light. And there wasn't a question in here. I do want to address this. It says, were the Arcturians corrupted by the negative ETs? So Lyrans, Orion, Syrians, Arcturians, Andromedans, Earth humans, we have all at some point, there are groups or hybridized race lines that have come out from basically every starseed that has had some level of corruption to them. So yes, there are some Arcturians that did intertwine a little bit more with the Anunnaki. There are Syrians that there's the etheric Syrians, and then there are the blue, what I would call the blue ray, or the Christ consciousness or law of one aligned Syrians. And then even within the Sirius star nations, there are certain factions of Syrians that have become corrupted, such as Orion. And I think it's for us in Orion, we have to think of it backwards. Not all sentient races in Orion were corrupted. Andromeda was, and it's a place to be very careful for, to really realize that a lot of times when this energy comes through for us through guidance, through the idea of ascended masters and so on and so forth, that we want to really discern through our heart center. Your heart knows what feels like organic living light. And these beings will, anything that is connecting with you that has your highest good as an intention will match the frequency of your heart, but it's also still really good to ask, are you in alignment with the highest good of my higher self and in alignment with Christ consciousness? And that as we instate that, you pay attention, or this is how I sense it, but I invite this. Pay attention to the feeling in your heart center, your star fire in your heart, as you ask these questions, because then you will easily feel those that do not have our highest good. There will be a feeling or a sensation or just a knowing that will move within, that will be a signal to us of an intention that is not in our highest good. So within this is something I would invite us, that when we look at all aspects of different star races, just like we look at Earth, and I'm going to even throw this out a little bit bigger, because say we think about Arcturians. Well, Arcturians have multiple suns within the Arcturus. Actually, let me take it to the Sirius star nation. So, because we're actually a binary system that's starting to match with them. This is why our consciousness is elevating. So now when we think of the Sirius, you can look in the night sky right now, and Sirius is just dancing in the sky, but we know there's Sirius A, B, and even a Sirius C. But if you imagined you were in the Sirius star system and you were looking back towards where Earth is, all you would see is a very dim or a smaller starlight, which would be our sun. You wouldn't actually see all the planets in our solar system. And so therefore, we're really kind of more identified by our sun or the soul here, because that would be the same thing when you think about looking at the Sirius star system. There's the suns there, the stars there, but there's also many, many, many planetary systems there, and there's different species and different race lines there. So therefore, when you would think about being in another constellation looking at towards where Earth is, how would you begin to describe whether or not the people or the beings in this system, are they good or are they not good? And that's how we also need to have discernment when we connect to Orion, to Canceri, to Pegasus, to all of these different, we get to realize that no matter what, there's so much polarity within the cosmos that our true connection starts to come with our heart discernment. And that is just something they keep working with me with in order to elevate that. So I love that.
That's so helpful. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one other question that came through, Becca, which is about, if somebody finds themselves in avoidance of this information, what advice do you have to begin to start working with this information?
And let me just clarify that. So are you referring to, say, maybe a family member or a friend or a loved one, or?
Somebody actually shared that they're finding themselves in a loop of avoidance of facing some of the things that you went deeply into today. and wondering if you have any advice or any thoughts on how one would get themselves out of that cycle of avoidance.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's actually a really great, a great question, because that actually ties in very closely with sometimes why we don't want to look at the past, or why we don't want to look at maybe something that happened in childhood where, maybe a trauma happened and it's like, no, we just don't open that, or we don't want to look at that, or we don't want to go there. And sometimes we will find that just playing out as a signature in our body or in our consciousness as I just am comfortable, or I just feel like I'm avoiding it, or I feel as though I don't want to. That in itself is your body speaking to you. That's your body showing you that there is something there, and that it has found the best way possible to protect you from it. And the best way possible it's come up with to protect you is to just keep creating the feeling of let's avoid it, let's not look at it, let's just not go there. And so a lot of times when we get to find places where we maybe start to have disassociation, disconnection, feel as though we leave our body, feel as though our mind goes blank when we start to tap into things. This happens a lot in the very beginning when people are starting to explore this stuff, that it almost feels like their brain tunes out, or it's like, oh, I just missed everything that you just said, or the feeling of like, oh man, I'm tired, I just want to take a nap. This happens a lot for people even when they start meditating, because what's happening is all the base programs that have been trying to keep the body safe are saying, oh my gosh, they're starting to find the doorway out of here, shut them down. It's like, oh, take a nap or something. So within this, there's what I invite is just being really gentle, just sitting with it, just beginning to describe, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting that the moment I hear this, I want to avoid it? Isn't it interesting? And that there is no have to, that it can just be from a curiosity of starting to expand. Am I living my life in my absolute most freedom? Is my life magic? Am I manifesting this reality in all of the greatest freedom I could ever imagine from myself, or for myself as my greatest soul purpose? And if one is fully feeling completely free, expressive, living your soul's purpose, be it. There are many, many starseeds that are going to come to this earth that they're actually designed to not ask questions, because the soul is utilizing more from a subconscious level the avatar of this body to live out one's soul's purpose. And this is why I tell people to not ever have any judgment about when one starts to acknowledge, oh, when they woke up, when they started asking questions, I think the big term is like my big awakening, or when I started to wake up to this information. A lot of times this is actually taking place from your oversoul's design when that happens, because there's just so much intricacy to how we are a collective working together to elevate ourselves as a species together. And so within that would also be a question I would invite. Am I meant to explore this? In what way would it be best for me to live my highest soul's purpose? And part of that is just surrendering our ego every day, our avatar every day, to our higher self, to the divine purpose of the infinite intelligence that is in alignment with this blue ray or this Christ consciousness. And that as the more and more we do this, we just start to go like, hey, I always am right where I need to be when I need to be there. So be the freedom that we came here to be.
Yeah, mic drop.
Beautiful.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you share with everyone, because there's been a lot of questions about it, how can one work with you, and what does that look like, and what can you tell us about that?
Oh, absolutely. So my website would be the easiest way for people to get connected with me. My website is withbecca.com. I also have a YouTube channel, It's Soul Based Life on YouTube, that I post a lot of free videos on there, portions from our membership, our Soul Circle, because I do host a membership group. It's just a way for us to stay connected, to stay communicating, elevating the conversation with each other. So that I try to make myself as available as possible, but I do have services listed right on my website. And I do have some workshops coming up starting this next month that are going to be a walkthrough. So a step-by-step through our entire owner's manual, so that it can give us a way to really look at all the intricate places within there, so that each person can begin to really contemplate these places and know thyself, that great wisdom, right?
Fantastic. It has been such a joy, pleasure, honor, and to have you here with us in this co-creation and all your beauty and wisdom and grace. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so much gratitude and love for you, Becca. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for tuning in.
Yes, thank you, everyone. We love you. We will see you soon. And yeah, feeling very excited and blissed out.
Thank you guys so much.
So much
Thank you.
love.